I'm terrible at introducing people. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody, and we'll get started?
Sure thing. Awesome. My name is Brandon, better known as B. I am a poet. That's pretty much me. Everything else is sideline. I like to just claim that poet part. But yeah, I'm a Brooklyn born and raised Dominican Rican, what most people would call the devil. Kind of a youngin, about to finally hit 30 this year, but just out here writing, performing, about to publish my first book, actually performing at the New York City Poetry Festival next weekend. Super excited about that. So, just out here working on the craft,
And you're in
spitting
you're in
real shit.
Orlando, right?
No, I'm in Jacksonville right now.
Oh, Jacksonville, Florida. Uh,
Yeah,
when did you move there? You said Brooklyn, born and raised, right?
yeah. I've been like honestly a nomad since I was 18. My mom always said you're gonna be the first one to leave, and I sure as hell was. So I've lived in every single borough in New York except for Manhattan, strange enough. And I've also lived in Westchester, and I lived in Virginia for a very short while, and now I'm here for work.
What do you do as your side gig, if you don't mind?
Oh, I'm a gosh, it's always so my technical title is production support. It's basically IT. Something like that. I do application support. I work here in the finance industry, so pretty much make sure that all their major applications that send money to one another or like receipts or billings, whatever, that all is working and spending and fluctuating properly. Apps are updated, et cetera, et cetera.
And that feeds
What
the
do you
art,
mean?
right? I mean, we had a guest on earlier. Shout out to Tootie Alvarez in Chicago. He's a truck driver, delivery driver, and he's a poet too. So, and he's a great poet, great journalist, and so I'm always giving shout outs to people who, are making art and earning a living too, because those two things, especially if you're Latino, especially if you're Black Latino, is very hard to do, right?
Absolutely. Too hard.
And the usually, I mean, I don't bring on any poet. I brought you on because I had seen maybe a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago. I don't know. Time's flying. You had that poem. Where do we go? You were performing it for Solar. I should explain that's how I know you through Solar. I mean, do you want to explain Solar to people and how you're involved in it?
So literally it's a big beast. Pretty much just it's a collective of all different types of artists. Like from my understanding at least, because when I joined it was like primarily poetry, but they expanded it. So they have a lot of singers, they have writers, they coordinate with like actors, theater actors. It's a collective of at this point it's pretty much family. We come out, we perform, give different artists, especially ones that are just trying to get out there platforms to perform, share their art, talk about important things, and really get out there. Like it's a great group. So I started performing for them in 2019, and then I got close with Jose, and when the pandemic hit, we kind of just started working more and more together to just make all these different events, virtual events. He does a lot of work out in Puerto Rico as well, community work out in Philly. That's like when I do the poetry festival, I will be performing with a couple of the Solar Tree fam. They're working on their first book. Like, well, actually, they're releasing their first book, Poetical. It's like it's a handful of artists that have worked with Solar Trees for their first volume, and they're working on another. It's just, like I said, it's a beast of a bunch of just creatives. And what I do love about it, it's a lot of people of color. It's a lot of Latinos, Black people really just showing what that brown magic is about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody else doing that. I mean, every time I talk to Jose, he's like a mad scientist, always cooking up something, and he's always worrying, what can he do more? What can he do more? And I keep telling him, like, what you guys are making with Solar Tree is unique and crazy. Like, it's the only place on I see it on Instagram. I know you guys have a YouTube channel where it's basically like these concerts, these of Latino artists that one you're giving a platform to like you said Latino artists and poets who would never have that platform, and two, nobody else is doing it, which is surprising, right? Like the major, not only the major mainstream media outlets, but like Latino outlets aren't really doing what you guys are doing, right? Showcasing this talent from not only across all over the United States, but all over the world. People in Puerto Rico and stuff like that. And there's so much potential in that, right? Like where Solitary can go, what it can be. Really, right now, you guys are just like a clearinghouse for Latino talent. I would be surprised if people like mainstream people or people outside of the Latino whatever start coming to you guys and being like, hey, we want to. Do you have any singers? Do you have any poets? Do you have any writers? Do you have any? Because they're going to come to you, seeing that you guys are like the hub for all this talent. I mean, has that happened at all? Do you know? Or I mean,
Yeah,
um,
it actually happened earlier this year. So Temple University in Philly, they were looking for somebody to do kind of a virtual event because pandemic lockdown, everybody. So they reached out to Solar Tree and they're like, hey, do you have like A, B, and C, like people that we could just put on a show for our students virtually and so on and so forth. So it actually ended up being a really bomb show, paid in all. And Jose, like I said, Jose keeps everything in his bag. Like he'll pull out any trick you need. So we had poets there, musicians, comedian, everybody just like really bringing the house down for this virtual event for a university, which is it was so random to me, but it was just really dope and an honor to be a part of. It's like we're really bringing it, and I feel like Solar Tree has so many further places to go,
yeah,
but this being just the first stepping stone, the pandemic actually helped it more than it hurt it because we were really able to reach out. Like you said, we're across the United States, Puerto Rico. We even have a few artists in Canada that we work with a lot.
wow. I mean, and so I mean, we should get into it. How did you get into poetry? Because that's it's a dying art form, right? And people. I mean, how'd you get into poetry?
So I was 17. I had just like recently been diagnosed with diabetes. I was like just kind of coming out of the closet, coming into terms with myself, dealing with, transitioning out of high school, going
You
into
had said
college.
type. We had talked about this before, right? In Toiletries thing, you said what was
Yeah,
it?
type
Type
1
one,
diabetes.
type
Yes.
type one, right? And what was the
Yeah.
difference between type? Most people hear about type two, right? What's the difference between those two?
So type 2 is what they call like adult onset diabetes, but it's pretty much for the most part, yeah, some of it varies with genetics, but it's pretty much obesity, dieting. So your pancreas kind of goes out of whack when you're overweight and you're not dieting properly. So that one actually could be
You wait,
managed
hold
in
on. You're the lighting in your where you're at is like it looks like you're about to be fucking carried up
if
to
I
heaven or something.
listen, I'm
You
driving.
might
Like,
be.
let
I
me
don't know. You might be.
lower this blind.
Just
Yeah,
a little
I'm
bit.
still working on figuring out lighting and stuff. Yeah, I literally just moved into this apartment 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago.
No, that's better. Yeah, perfect.
Working on. But yeah, so yeah, type 2 is pretty much has to do with dieting and weight, and that could be managed either through injections, pills, even dieting. There are some people, depending on the severity, if they fix their diet, it eventually goes away. A lot like gestational diabetes, where like females get pregnant and because of that extra weight, they develop diabetes for the term of their pregnancy and then it goes away. But
Wow.
type 1 is like it was originally called juvenile diabetes, but
Yeah.
the more it evolved in science, kind of research it, people get it later. Like I got it at 16, and a lot of people are like, what they knew of was born with it. Your pancreas just shuts down. Like it's done. It's not producing any more insulin. You are on injections or however you have to do. You need an external form of insulin in your body, and you need everything managed all day, every day.
Yeah. I mean, so was your? I mean, so how did you develop type one? I mean, was it diet? Was it genetics? Was it?
So yeah, essentially with type 1, it is genetics, but we're still kind of trying to figure out how that happened. It must have skipped like several generations because there's nobody in my immediate family or even prior to that, or even nobody else that I know of in my family has type 1 diabetes. That's why it was a shock to everybody because like I'm a small person. So when I was diagnosed, I was only like 90 pounds.
Right.
So nobody like really thought of it as anything. And I remember like I was young and I'm just talking to one of my friends and I'm like, oh, I've been feeling A, B, and C. She goes, that sounds like diabetes. My grandmother has that. You should get it checked. So I told my
What were the
parents and they're like,
symptoms you were
yeah.
feeling?
So when you experience high blood sugar, which is pretty much what it is for the most part, because you don't have that insulin, you get extremely dry mouth. You're urinating like every hour, sometimes even more than that. You feel really sluggish. You get really like moody, a bad headache. And then like when you don't eat for a long time, you get really shaky and you feel weak, like you're about to pass out.
Mm.
So yeah, I did that. And I went to my immediate doc, my primary care, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that does sound like diabetes. I think it might be type 2 though. Let me go to an endocrinologist and check it out." A couple weeks later, I went to an endocrinologist, and he was like, "I don't even know how you're standing right now. Your blood sugar is like 542 or something like that." He's like, "We're gonna have to hospitalize you today." I remember just looking at my father, and I was like, So there was that. And then, like I said, dealing with, just that regular teen stuff, transitioning into adult sexuality. I was a mess, honestly. I was a mess. And my father saw it. And my father's been in the poetry community for a while. So he goes, come with me. I want you to see this. So I remember I went to this place and I'm just like listening to everybody. I'm like, I like this. Like, I could do this. So then I started kind of practicing it myself. And he would get me into these places where I could perform. I was like 17, 18, going into bars, performing and bouncing. And ever since then, it kind of just, my writing developed more. My confidence came out in performing. Because when I first started performing, I was like this, like you can hear the shaking in my voice every time. But now I'm just like I said, the confidence is there. I come out, I'm ready to be a beast.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's crazy that your dad was in the poetry scene. I mean, how was he in the poetry scene?
Great question. I just realized I never asked him. Like, I don't know if it's because of people that he knew, because honestly, I don't even know how he met the people that he kind of linked me with. But like, I know not only would he like photograph these events because he's a photographer, but he performed too. But I never asked how he got into it. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be
That's
there next
yeah.
week.
That's why I asked, because like the running theme, and everybody's gonna be like, oh, you're repeating yourself. But one of the running themes of this show happens to be that like you know what you do in life or who you become largely comes down to your parents, man. Like your parents will either tell you something when you're a kid, show you something, encourage you in some way. We've had people on here who, their dad gives them a guitar when they're 11 and they become a musician. Your dad took you to poetry readings when you're 17, you become a poet. Like it's crazy how much we have our individuality, our personality, right? But man, are we the product of the people and places we come from? It's crazy.
Very much that. I'm a disgusting product of the both of my parents. Like I see it all the time. The things that I love and the things that I don't love. And sometimes I catch myself. I'm like, damn, I sound like my mother. Damn, that's just like my father. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, I'm exactly the same way. Like my I think my talkativeness and the way I'm able to talk to people, that's my dad. Like me and my dad are estranged. Like he left us when my mom left him when I was in second grade, and I seen him here and there after that. But he's like this, right? He's very gregarious, I guess is the word. He talks to everybody. And then I'm kind of like I can be pretty mean too, right? And that's a little bit of my mom and my dad, right? But what was I gonna say? I was gonna ask you, what was it? What was the kind of poetry that you did? What was your poetry like when you first started? What were you drawing on? What were you reading?
It was all honestly a lot like kind of just mental health. Really, it was like it's almost like my poetry was a journal. And I wouldn't say it's not until maybe recently where my poetry, like themes and subject matter, has expanded. But for years, my poetry was kind of like it's the way that I handled all of my emotions. Like I'm not. It's crazy. I think of myself as a really good writer, but I'm not a good speaker at all.
Mm,
Like things don't come out the way they're supposed to half the
I'm the same
time.
way. Yeah.
And talking about like how we're like our parents, my mother is rude as hell, and I have her mouth in the worst way. So I know when if I write things, it's gonna come out so much better than if I speak it. So a
Right.
lot of it was just kind of things that I was going through at the time, experiences, whether like breakup, depression, anything that I felt like I needed to release because I always felt like it helped.
Yeah. No, I mean there's this is random, but I'm a history nerd, so I know history. I know random history things. My wife's always rolling her eyes. But like yeah, like Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson's known as he's a great writer. He's an amazing writer, right? But when he was president, you know how like when you have to give a State of the Union address, he would just write his and then to have somebody read it for him in Congress. And like yeah, if I was president, if I ever became president, that's what I would do. I wouldn't give any speeches. I just have people read whatever I wrote because like just doing TikTok too. Like I tried to get into TikTok. People were like, "Oh, you got to get doing the TikTok." Writing lines is one thing, and then reciting them, performing them, and having them come out the way you intended them to sound is so fucking hard, man. Like I can write something, it take me 30 minutes an hour, but then trying to perform it, man, I just hate myself. I hate the way I sound. I'm stuttering all of a sudden. It's crazy,
Right.
but the more I practice those TikToks, so that's the only way I perform. You go to like coffee houses and poetry houses and stuff like that, so you're practicing and getting better. And I don't really practice. The podcast is really for me practicing speaking, really, getting what's in my mind out. So I mean, mental health. that's a great that's a great topic to really be digging into for poetry. I mean, what was the kind of you said? Okay, I would imagine if I'm 17 and I get diagnosed with diabetes or anything like that, where it's like, hey, my life's gonna be hard now, right? You're 17, you're already thinking life's gonna be hard, right? Because you're like, fuck, man, all these things are coming at you. You're about to be an adult. Life's about to get real, and then you get this other thing thrown at you. So, like, I mean, what were some of the things that you were worrying about, and what are some of the things that, say, somebody's getting it diagnosed with diabetes this year or next year? Some of the things that you'd want to tell them. Some of the things you should wish you could have told yourself, or somebody would have told you about, like, having this diagnosis.
I think the first thing is definitely prepare for the emotional journey. And this is something that the doctor touched on briefly, but having diabetes does mess with your hormones a lot. So it does make a lot of sense where, you kind of struggle with these different things in your head. But it's like, it's not just that. And especially if you're doing it at a later, it's the adjustment to like life, the way that people start to look at you differently, that people start to kind of like assume that you're not capable of certain things, or you can't do certain things, or they'll just like weirdly apologize for things, or just ask the stupid questions. Like, honestly, the questions kill me.
Like
It's
what?
just like,
Just so I know, so I don't ask them.
oh, like, oh, so you have to inject yourself with that every day. I'm like, or I'll die. But yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, or like people, I've really had people look at my insulin pens and assume they're drugs, which I find hilarious.
Or when,
So I
yeah, I'm
remember
sure people go like, "Oh, I can never do that. I would never be injecting myself." Like, yeah, you would be if you had diabetes. You would be.
exactly. So that would kill me. I remember I used to do this on the train all the time because like, you eat, you want to like snack and stuff, but my diabetes is like I have to take insulin every single time I eat. So people would like start to stare at me and I would start to get annoyed. I have a mouth on me. But NYC, you got a mouth there, you fighting on the train, it's
Mm-hmm.
happening enough. So on purpose, like every time I would take on my insulin to take my thing, I'd be like, let me get ready for this just to fuck with people.
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. I mean, and then so your dad takes you to poetry readings, right? So you're doing poetry, and this is where in Florida.
No, because I'm Brooklyn born and raised. So it was Brooklyn, and he also took me to a spot in the Bronx as well.
Okay. And so, and what was the initial response to your poetry, and what did you think, and what did you, you know, I want to help. The other thing is I like talking to people about how they became, how they became what they became, how they're doing it, right? I talked to David a couple weeks ago, right? There's people like who want to do poetry, especially Latinos, right? Especially Latinos. Like if you're, I don't mean to be that person, but if you're white and you want to be a poet, it's very easy to find other white poets doing poetry, right? But it's not so easy if you're Latino, right? And so I want to give somebody who's maybe thinking about it a sense of like how to start and what it's going to be like starting.
I'm just gonna tell you what I tell all of my friends or the people that ask. It's literally just do it, just
Yeah.
write it,
Yeah.
just literally like because poetry is not as restricted as everybody thinks it is. Everybody thinks you have to have like a specific format, or you have to be rhyming, or you have to perform like this. And I'm just like, no, it's like honestly that type of poetry, like not knocking anybody, it cracks me up every time because like I'm not really just trying to be that. I'm letting my words dramatize everything. I don't need the drama in my voice. But it's like a lot of people see poets like that, or they just look at different poets and they kind of get they're just like, I'm not sure if I can do this. Like, I'm not sure if I could ever be able to perform this way or write this way. And it's like,
Yeah.
poetry is not about, poetry is literally just about expression. Just write it, just do it. Whichever way you feel is comfortable for you and how you do it, do it. If you want to become like a spoken word artist and really perform, practice it, but just don't, yes, you could learn from other people, but just have your own voice.
Yeah.
There's just one thing that I can say that I like not only do I kind of just switch up the flow of all my poetry, but I definitely learned a lot from a lot of different poets that I look at and I idolize, but I know my voice is different from theirs.
Yeah. No, that's just with writing in general, right? Have your own voice, man. Like that's the key. Like whatever you're gonna do, have your own voice. Have it be you, right? Nobody can do you. I'm glad you brought up that whole idea of slam poetry being like, some slam poets, some I mean, what's his name? The guy who does Shaklack Clack. That's a great fucking slam poem. But a lot of slam poetry people, like, I guess kids, they see slam poetry and they think, oh, they see the performance, right? and it's really heavy on the performance. And then you know, if you're a writer, you're listening to what they're actually saying, and you're like, they're not really saying anything. Their lyrics are generic, they're not specific, they're vague, and they just go out there and they have like an interesting clothes on. Maybe they look interesting and they perform interesting, but their words, the actual words, are not interesting. So I mean, how tough is it? And maybe sometimes I think maybe I'm putting too much on this, but how tough is it to be and I can already hear the Latinas rolling their eyes and sighing and going, "Oh my God," to be a male poet, because just as a writer like you're not, as a man, as a Latino man, you're not supposed to be expressive. You're not supposed to be in touch with your feelings, and so to be a poet is that's leaning into that shit, right? You're very emotional, very expressive. I mean, what kind of pushback have you ever gotten being a male poet?
So I think what helps for me, honestly, is my sexuality because, like, yeah, I'm bisexual. So kind of just like everybody always looks, everybody's like, oh, bisexual, okay, gay. So they're just like they expect that like artsy shit, whatever. So I've never gotten pushback, but from other poets that I've seen and friends that I've had, it's like even people I know who have dated poets, they assume automatically like either they assume gay or they assume they're like emotional
Right.
crybabies and A, B, and C. And I've seen it, and it's just like, yeah, it's very closed-mindedness, and it shouldn't be because I've seen amazing male poets, hetero male poets that
Right.
like whether it's erotic poems, mental health, or things about the streets, like they're beasts. So it's like people do hear poetry and automatically they assume, no matter like what the gender is, who it's coming from, that it's just whiny shit and people are just crying about their feelings. Or like I said, poetry is so much more vast than that, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like being a Latino male poet, because regardless, I have this network of people that I know for a fact would not have opened themselves up to this kind of world before.
Yeah.
So many people, whether it has been family members or coworkers, and then they finally come and experience it. They watch my videos. They'll come to like Solar Tree Online things. They're like, "Wow, that was really dope. I want to do this again."
Yeah. I mean, and
I've had
that
so many people kind of come and be like, "Yeah, I'm only going because it's you. I don't like poetry." And then afterwards, they're like, "Oh shit."
right. No, and like you said, like when people find out that you're bisexual, they're like, "Oh, okay, of course he does poetry." Like that's so stupid. You know what I mean? It's anybody. The whole point of poetry is that anybody can do poetry, right? Um, and and the more different the experiences, the more interesting the poetry, right? Um, but the other thing is that, man, I gotta stop smoking weed, or I don't know what it is, or I gotta keep drinking coffee. But you said that, yeah, like that's what I think I feel the same way because like I know a lot of people who read my stuff don't really read anything, you know? They wouldn't really read anything and they're like, "Oh, I know Hector and he's a regular ass dude, like he's not, you know, he's just a regular ass dude." People who grew up with me and they become really interested in the things that I write about. And I guess we're talking about the importance of representation, I guess, right? The importance of
Yeah.
people seeing people like them doing things that they never thought anyone like them would do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely that. And it's also just kind of why like I can't say I am necessarily successful in it. I can say I'm becoming successful. And then that's another thing that kind of opens doors to and opens minds when people see like, oh wow, you're doing this, this, and that. And I didn't think that that was possible with
Right.
poetry. And it's honestly something that I'm learning too, because what are we in 2021? Jesus Christ. And let's say this time 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought any of the stuff that I've done within the last 2 years was imaginable
Right.
at
Yeah.
all. I thought you either had to be like super big and crazy and like performing in like New Yorican or like Apollo or some shit, or you were just doing it for fun.
Yeah.
Then in between, I don't think anybody ever really realizes, and it's a fun journey.
Yeah.
It is.
No, it's right. You have to reassess and reevaluate, redefine what success means. Being a successful poet, being a successful writer. when I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to be like Hemingway, right? And I realized, oh, not even every white person becomes Hemingway. Never mind a black Latino, right? And so, and I just wrote something about success today, kind of. Success is just doing it, right? Success is, I've heard that, right? About comedians. They'll say a successful comedian is somebody who's does it for 10, 20, 30. They just keep doing it. Like if you can keep doing it, you're successful, right? Because that's the battle, right? Can you do it? Can you do it?
Yeah, for sure. It's about the consistency and pushing through because like even like before I met Jose and started with Solar Tree, I didn't even perform like a year or so prior to that. And then kind of just everything hit at once.
And now it's addicting, right? Now you can't go. You probably can't go too long without performing something, right? Putting a video up of something, you performing something, right?
Yeah, at all. It's even like coming down here, I was just like I ended up finding a spot down here I could perform at and places that I have yet to perform that I plan on it. And then,
Yeah.
everything you see how Jose is always in motion and me working alongside him, I could just do so much on with that virtual platform. So I definitely don't think I can go too long without performing.
So why'd you move down to Florida, and when'd you move down there?
I moved down here in October for work.
Oh,
So like
last
I'm
October.
on Yeah, so I'm contracted through this bank I'm working for. So I came down here essentially I moved because even though we were in the midst of the pandemic, they said we're going to open up an office soon. And so I'm just like, okay, my apartment lease was ending in Brooklyn. I'm like, why find another spot and not knowing when I have to go to Jacksonville, I could just go to Jacksonville. And now I'm here and it honestly looks like I'll never see the inside of that office.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, whatever. Like it's an experience, I guess, but I don't
How do
think
you
I'm
like
ever.
it down there?
It's different. At first I was real cool with it because I do really do get like I have, I guess, like agoraphobia. I hate crowds. I hate being like feeling people on top of me. I hate trains. Like the second I get in my car, I never touch the train again. I'm like, I refuse. So I'm just like, I was glad to be away from all of that for a while. And it was like just a nice break. I escaped the winter. I didn't have to deal with any of the snowstorms. I was just doing things. And then as of late, I'm like, I'm really starting to get homesick. I'm like, wait, I miss the bodega walks. I miss going out with my friends. I miss
Yeah.
knowing people.
The culture, the people, right? That's what I miss about Chicago. I'm in
I
Vegas.
miss Democrats being the majority.
I was gonna say, I mean, how much of the stereotypes of Floridians is true? Are they really wild? They're
All of them.
crazy.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
I mean, what's the
Every single
wildest
one.
thing? What's the most Floridian wild thing you've seen?
All right. I guess I got two. One of them was in the first apartment I moved into. Like I'm chilling, I'm exploring, and then boom, alligator in my backyard. Just chilling in the lake, and there's a sign, yeah, don't go too close. If you see it, don't feed it. I'm like, yes, because that's my first instinct. I want to fucking feed the alligator.
Yeah. Right.
And then the second one is actually like my boyfriend works for Best Buy, and there was a mishap with these two older white women. One of them confused about who was supposed to go first on the line. They got into an argument. One of them called the other one a cunt. Then they both pulled guns out of their purses and was ready to blast off in the middle of Best Buy over skipping the line.
White ladies?
Yeah,
Bro, that's crazy, dude.
I'm getting adjusted to the fact that majority of people here have guns, and like you can go into a Walmart and be like,
Yeah. No, it's same thing in Vegas. It's weird, like, and you don't see it, but like you start to realize, oh, everybody here has a gun. Like, it's crazy. And you have a gun yet?
no, I'm not. I know my temper. I'm a Dominican and Puerto Rican man, as I said, and no, not happening. I know me. I'll blast off way too quick.
Yeah. You got a quick temper.
Yes, and that's also something I'm learning to work on too. Because out here, I got to remember, like I said, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm used to like, all right, you want to do something, let's fight about it. Like I'm always down to throw hands, honestly. Like mind you, I'm 5-0, but if we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight. Let's do it. But I remember people like I gotta like I'm really trying to remember people here like we don't do that. We'll shoot.
And so you're Dominican. How do you say it? Like
Yes.
Dominican? So perfect. I mean, there's Dominicans and Puerto Ricans are cousins, right? But so what's the difference? What's the same?
I say Puerto Ricans are Dominicans with socks. There's really there's maybe a difference in like dialect, the way certain words are pronounced. Sometimes like depending on where from the island some people are, but some people in Puerto Rico will throw that R with the like with a phlegm, like they're speaking Yiddish or some shit, like ajo.
Ajos. Yeah.
That shit kills me. Like I cannot. And then Dominicans are super loud and fast for no reason. And like it kills me because my Spanish is I'm not super fluent. So like talk to me like I'm slow, speak slowly. So
Oof.
my mother's the worst type of Dominican ever in life. So she'll start speaking to me in English and then middle of the story goes at 100 miles per minute Dominican Spanish and then goes back to English. And she's like, so yeah, you get it? And I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
like that's Dominican Spanish is crazy. So it's like I said, dialect, the way they speak it. I guess in certain different like food seasoning and stuff, but it really not much of a difference.
Well, I mean, and this is there's somebody came on the show, Dr. Kim Patowski. She wrote a book on Mexicans and Puerto Ricans in Chicago, and one of the questions was that survey or whatever poll. What do you feel more Mexican, more Puerto Rican? Now, most Mexican Ricans would say no, I'm half and half, right? But some will admit, no, I'm more Puerto Rican, more Honduran, or more Mexican. I'm Mexican. I'm Puerto Rican, Honduran, right? So I feel Puerto Rican, but my wife will say, no, you're more Honduran. Like you're not very Puerto Rican. So I don't know what that means, but do you ever sense in yourself that you're more Dominican or more Puerto Rican? I would probably guess that you probably are more Puerto Rican sometimes, more Dominican sometimes.
It's so hard because this is really a loaded question we're about to get into. The first thing, if my mom listens to this, I'm so sorry because the first thing my mother says, and she'll always say it to my father, she said, and excuse the vulgarity, you came out of my twat, so you're more Dominican. Her exact
Yeah.
words. That's her, not me. So she always comes for that. I guess it's weird because, like I said, I don't feel like I always feel somewhere in a lost center. I don't necessarily always feel Dominican, especially because my lack of Spanish. I don't always necessarily feel Puerto Rican because I don't feel like super close to the culture. I just feel what's in my blood. I know for a fact I don't feel fucking American. But so I kind of just go off of what I've been raised with and what's in my blood. But I guess when it boils down to it, I guess I feel more Puerto Rican. Just kind of when it comes to certain, especially Puerto Ricans in America. Like I feel like I'm just an Americanized Puerto Rican.
Yeah. I mean that's kind of what due to colonialism, right? That's what all Puerto Ricans are really, Americanized Puerto Ricans. But yeah, I mean, like it's weird when you're half and half of something like that, right? Like I'm half Honduran, half Puerto Rican, you're half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. You start to sense like you said, you don't feel either, right? Because if you're not pure, people will tell you if you're not pure something, then you're not that at all. If you're not pure Puerto
Right.
Rican, you're not Puerto Rican at all. If you're not pure Dominican, you're not Dominican. And so you start to question like, well, what does Puerto Rican mean then? Because I am Puerto Rican, but obviously I'm being told or I'm not. Supposedly I'm not. So what does Puerto Rican mean? What is? Then you start analyzing label. It's like a healthy way of analyzing labels because then you start analyzing. You might analyze gender, religion. What does it mean to be a New Yorker? What does it mean to be a Chicagoan, Las Vegas? Like these are all like labels, but like so then you start to feel like just like it's weird that you said you didn't feel American because like to me you seem like you're from New York and there's what's more American than New York, right?
We're not American.
Now New
We're just
Yorkers,
a special breed that's inside America.
is that I mean I sense that from New Yorkers that they don't feel like they're American. They feel like they're New Yorkers. New York is a country attached to America.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally. And like I said, I'm definitely New Yorker through and through. It doesn't matter where I go. I've been called out on it so many times. Apparently, I have an accent that I never hear, but there's an accent that exists that's apparently within me. And just from like my style, the way that I walk,
Well,
my
you have a New York accent? Of course you do. You don't hear it?
not at all.
Oh man, that's hilarious. And like I hear when Jose talks, I mean he has a Philly accent too now, I totally hear totally the way you guys talk, the words you guys use are totally I'm from Chicago, right? So like I can hear my Chicago accent, especially now being around Las Vegas people. I can hear my Chicago accent all the time, but you don't hear your New York accent, your Dominican New York accent.
It sometimes it'll something that come out. So like my best friend's white, and she's white, and she's Brooklyn born, but she's been in Staten Island for so long. She sounds exactly like that. So it's funny. So we'll always call each other out on things, and there are like certain words that I say that she can never get over because it always comes out with this accent that I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
So she makes fun of the way that I say Sunday.
Sunday. What is that? That's
She makes
Dominican,
fun of the way
right? That's
I
Dominican. Sunday.
she makes fun of the way I say kings, which I don't think is weird.
King.
King. Like king and queen.
King. Oh, king. You're saying king. See, you're saying king. You know,
It sounds normal to me.
like I'll
So
say
like I said,
pitcher. I'll say pitcher or winter for winter. I'll say winter pitcher.
winner. Or it's like, or one thing that I've definitely noticed, and people call me out on it all the time, and I think that's just the through New Yorker in me, is that the way that I say excuse me to people, like in the streets. So I'm walking by, I don't mean it. And so everybody just like just don't even say it at all. Because I was like, excuse me. And I could just, keep walk by with I mean it with politeness, but
Yeah.
apparently my excuse me's are very aggressive.
That's the New Yorker in you, dude. Hey, do you see that comedian on Instagram? He's a Dominican, right? And he does all these skits. He's like his name's Poppy or something. Oh, I'll send him to
Yeah,
you.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I think people watch him. I watch him just because I'm like in awe of Dominican, his accent. Like I'm like sometimes I have no idea what he's talking about because he's just like blah 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 blah. Like it's crazy, dude.
Have you never been to Washington Heights?
No.
Oh, sir. Check it out sometime when you're in New York.
So he's
That is
completely not unique at all, right?
they pretty much call it Little Dominican Republic. No, it's crazy. It's the most DR heavy place you can be in New York. Not even. I think outside Dominican Republic, that's basically second DR.
Why did they settle in? Why did Dominicans settle in Washington Heights?
That's a very good question. It's just always something I've known to be the Little Dominican Republic.
Because
It's
that's
been
on the
like
west side, right?
a very long time. Basically it's uptown Manhattan. It's the farthest thing. Like so, kind of when you're coming up Manhattan, it makes like a split where it just turns into the Bronx, and then you just go further up. You go to Harlem, go up, and then you're in the Heights, and that's like the end of that part of Manhattan before you get into Westchester. So they just got that one part right there, and it's just Dominican as hell. I
Have
love
you
it
been?
though.
Have you been back to either of the islands?
No, my God, no. I went the last time I was in Dominican Republic was 2017 or 2018. And the last time I was in Puerto Rico was 2016.
I mean,
It's
what's
just
your
like,
favorite place to go? I'm gonna make you enemies right
you,
now. What's your
you,
favorite place to go?
you're getting me fought, you're getting me cursed out.
You love them
Honestly,
both,
Puerto
right?
Rico.
Just like your kid. Puerto Rico?
Yeah. I mean, I love my Dominicans. I always say it through, but I guess what I don't like about Dominican Republic is like if you're obviously not from there and you're off a resort, then your life is in immediate danger. Like that the island is crazy. It's either it's scammers, it's murders, it's robbers, it's even you really got to stay on a resort if you're not from there. And even sometimes if you are from there, like shit happens and it's crazy. It was actually just last year, one of the I used to back in the day I was a para for Department of Education, worked with special needs kids. So one of
You were
the
what?
kindergarten teachers, paraprofessional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they work with special needs kids alongside the teacher. So one of the teachers that I worked with years ago, she was actually in the paper in Dominican Republic, and they robbed her and shot her in her car. Mind you, she's born there, and she came here, retired, and moved back. And then their newspapers are graphic, bro. Like I don't even know. One of the parents sent it to me, and I was honestly like, "Yo, why the fuck would you send me this shit?" Because like Dominican newspapers, they will show you the body. So I'm seeing this woman that I worked with laid out in her car with bullet holes in her chest. So like I guess what I don't like about Dominican Republic is that, like I said, if you're not there for like the resort feel, which you don't always want to go for, it's you're in danger. As opposed to like PR, when my father had a heart attack because one year I'm just like, I'm going alone. He's like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I'm just like, sir, I probably wasn't gonna do it, but when you tell me not to do things,
Right.
I'm gonna do it. So I went around San Juan by myself, went around old San Juan, seeing, all your typical, let's take picture shits. I went through like the back streets. I went through alleys. I walked through a cemetery. I felt perfectly fine. I took my precautions. Like I took off my jewelry and shit just in case, because I'm walking around at night in a back alley because clearly I have a death wish.
Yeah.
But I'm just like listening to the music playing from over here and the people partying over there. And it felt homey. I didn't feel afraid.
Yeah. Like, do you ever feel like that you're from New York, that wherever you go and people say, oh, it's dangerous here, you're like, motherfucker, I'm from New York. Like, I know danger. Like, when I went to Honduras, like, people are like, oh, it's dangerous here. It was the murder capital of the world when I went there. And I was like, man, I've been on the south side of Chicago late at night, like I know, what to do, right? Don't wear your watch, don't wear your jewelry, don't, you know, just keep, estás pendiente, right? Just be looking around, don't be stupid, right? Do you ever feel like being from New York makes you kind of fearless?
Yeah, definitely. I think to an extent, it's between that and mind you, I'm not like a super spiritual or religious person at all, but I've always just feel very protected. So it's that kind of street smart mentality and the fact that I always feel like I'm protected that I'm like I'm good. Because I've been in situations where honestly probably should be dead or locked up at some point, where I've just had the feeling right here that has always guided me away from it all.
Yeah.
I've watched other people get arrested. I've watched other people get hurt, and I've just, God willing, I've been chilling. So yeah, there's
God
not a
willing,
lot
I've
of
been
places.
chilling. Damn, you're a poet, man. You're a fucking poet. I never heard that either. God willing, I'll be chilling. Um, yeah, like I'm not spiritual either. I'm an atheist, actually. I wouldn't go so far to say there is no God or nothing, but I haven't seen enough evidence to even believe in it, so I don't believe in anything, right? But I do believe, and this is just a belief, that if you listen, the universe talks to you. The universe speaks to you, will tell you what to do, will tell you what's up. Not in some weird juju way, but just like it's weird how things will come up, words, like or I believe completely that telepathy is real because I'll be married to my wife 10 years next February, and we are always talking like mentally, like, and it's not even a joke. Like we'll say specific, like we'll be thinking of specific things, I'll be thinking of it and she says it, or vice versa. And that's, I'm a person of science, stuff like that, but I don't know how to explain that. I just do not know how to explain how she is thinking of something that I didn't mention, or like a weird word. Like I'll say a word. I'll write a word that I haven't used in years, right? I'm a writer, right? But I'll use a word that I haven't used in years because I have to use it. And then she'll come home from work and then use the word. And I'll be like, what the fuck? That is so fucking weird. It's, I can't give you an example, and that's what makes the fucking anecdote shit. But it's crazy. So I mean, let's wrap up a little bit. What's the name of this book? Is it title yet?
Oh yes. So it's listen, I guess self-sabotage a lot. At this point, I literally got it. If whoever else hears this is gonna fight me too. Jesus Christ. You can be fought after this show, but because everybody's been asking about the book, but I just have to choose a font and submit it to the publisher. And I've been sitting on it for like 2, 3 months. But yeah, the book is called B Notes.
B
And B
notes.
and kind of notes. So it's like it's a compilation of poems that not only are just experiences, but it's like kind of things that I would want to express to myself, other people, whether it's gaining closure on a situation or giving advice or just kind of instead of discussing, I also touch on mental health there, kind of grieving processes, breakups, all, kind of really I like the book a lot because it's a development of pretty much all my years of performing. My oldest poem from there is just a tweaked version from a poem in 2011. And my most recent poem there is as recent as like March.
I mean, how do you write every day? What's your writing process like? What inspires you to write a poem? How do you know it's a poem?
So I have to automatically in my head, and I guess that's the poet in me. I really do just start rhyming in my head like a crazy person. So I have so many poems that I never put out, never even like wrote it. But I know if I want to get back to it one day, it's like, okay, boom, it's gonna come out from what I remembered. But I'm inspired, like I said, primarily through like strong emotion. So that's where all my beginning poems came out of, like me feeling all these things and feeling I had to write about it. And honestly, yeah, strong emotion. Because now at this point, whether I feel like it's like current events, something going on in the world, like a situation I need to address, something I'm feeling, it really does often come out of that. Even like my erotic poetry, like I'm a strong sexual being. So I'm gonna write about it. And it's actually something new that I've gotten into. It's really, like I said, I'm so used to like mental health shit, like kind of exploring different themes is fun. So like the erotic poetry world, wild, bro. wild.
Yeah.
It's fun, but like not only writing it, but I actually went to an erotic like virtual open mic night about a month ago. Jesus, it was like a poetry orgy.
There's some erotic poetry national competition every year. And there was one in 2017 in Minneapolis. I didn't go, but I somehow knew the organizer, and he wanted to. I wrote this poem back like in 2013, 14, because I'm a writer. So even if I'm not a poet, but if you're a writer, you still have to dabble with poetry. It's kind of like how, if you're an NFL player or a basketball player, you know how they take like ballet. They'll take a ballet lesson just to help them with basketball, right? And if you're a writer and you don't try poetry every now and then you're not really training yourself, right? Because poetry is the hardest form of writing there is. It's just so hard. And but anyways, yeah. So it's weird that you brought up erotic poetry because I wrote a poem called "Fucking," and it's just about being broke and fucking, and and he wrote it and he read it there. But like, yeah, I mean, it's I feel like erotic poetry, if you do it honestly, right, is powerful because it's eat, sleep, fuck. We all do that, right? So if you're talking about fucking, I mean, who's not interested in that? Unless you're an incel, right? You're gonna not want to read a fucking erotic poetry. But like, who are your favorite poets of all time? Who are poets maybe now that we don't know? Maybe you don't want to give a shout out to your competition, but poets now that maybe you think are underrated that I should know about, people should know about.
Right. Yeah, I've never really deeply looked into poetry. Everybody like, oh, read poetry books, help expand your craft. But I just follow people that I see as I perform. So, and like the more I meet people. So it's like when I do speak to like when it comes to poets that I really do like, I love watching. Leah V, somebody with Solar Tree, she was hosting actually the open mic when I first went. And it was like as soon as she spoke, I was like, oh my God. Like not only is she a great host and she's gorgeous, but like her poetry is everything. RK, another poet I met through Solar Tree, she's ill. I collabed on Where Do We Go with her. Another poet, her name is Price. She is also a beast. I saw her for another gig that I performed at, and I was just like, she had me in the audience crying thug tears. So I'm just like, okay.
Yeah,
It's
very.
hard to name because, like I said, there's a bunch of people that are beasts.
Yeah.
Jay Rose is another one. She actually did the erotic open mic night. She's like, I met her at another gig that we were both featured for. So we both coincidentally added an erotic poem into our set. And Jesus, just Jesus.
Well, I mean, what for you makes poetry good? What makes it bad?
Um, it's like I said, I can't, and I feel bad for it, but then I don't, but then I do. The dramatized voice kills me because it takes away I think that's what it is. Like I guess that's what I wouldn't necessarily it's bad because some people have shit to say, but it's you're really taken away from your point. And then when it comes to making it good, it's that's tricky. But I guess two things that I'm really looking for are like really saying something
Yeah.
because there are people who've written poems and like two different poets and one they could make a poem about going to the laundromat and the right poet is going to make that shit sound beautiful and the other one you're going to be bored at.
Yeah.
And in the same aspect somebody could take a heartbreak and you're just going to be like okay and the other one you're going to be like crying. So it's
Right.
like it's not only like taking a situation but it's saying it and saying it in the right way. Like wordplay I love. Like I it's something that I'm learning to play with more like beyond like metaphors and similes like really just getting into like hyperbole and like double and triple entendres, like things that you're really gonna make you be like, oh shit. But even more things that after you hear it a second time and a third time, you're still picking up on things.
Right. For me, I don't know shit about poetry, but like for me, like yeah, when somebody says something that's like, that's real. Like one, I thought I was the only person who thought like that or felt like that, and here's a poet saying it, or shows me something that I always saw, but shows me it in a brand new way. Like those two things for me, I'm like, okay, this poet, this writer, because something sometimes it's just in writing, right? this writer is really awake when they're writing. They're not just giving me cliches, not trying to sound pretty. They're actually just trying to put truth on the page, man. And that's, to me, the most powerful thing about poetry. And I think a lot of people who I think we really need to do a good job in this country and in society, in the world, of cultivating a love for poetry, man. Because poetry is like philosophy, you know. It's got to go hand in hand. It's like it teaches you about the world, and if you have at least an appreciation, you don't have to understand it, but if you appreciate poetry, right? You know, how many times is your favorite poem, like when you're going through some shit in your mind? It's like a song, right? When you're going through some shit in your mind, and songs are poetry just to music, right? But you're going through some shit, and these lyrics will come in your head, and it's like, yeah, okay, thank you to that person who wrote those lyrics, because they're helping me through some shit now, man. Does anybody ever tell you that, like, hey, man, because that's what we live on too, right? Because we wanted to be these like rich and famous writers, and it's taken longer to do that. But every now and then somebody will come up to you and be like, hey, man, you know, you're doing a good job, man. I really felt that. Keep up the good work. And that fuels you, right?
Yeah, honestly, I think what I love, like, yeah, you know, I love the validation from my friends and the people that I know, because that's great. But when I go to like different open mics and people who don't know me from a hole in the wall come up to me and tell me, you know, give me those compliments, say things like that. And that's something that I've written about in a few of my own poems, about that feeling. It's a different type of validation, because it's not like they're not really inclined to tell you, but that's how you honestly know you hit somebody.
Right.
The fact that a stranger feels the need to come up and tell you like, yo, you did this for me. It's a different type of feeling. I mean, honestly, I really do live for that feeling.
For real. Like you can post something and get like 100 likes or whatever, how many likes. But if somebody comes up to you and you don't know them, and they're like, oh my God, that thing you wrote, blah, blah, blah. That's like amazing. And it's just so like, writing, especially poetry and the writing that I do, is so personal. And so it's like when you write it, you were alone and you were by yourself and you were spilling your guts onto the page. And then like somebody from across the country or the city or whatever read it and it affected them. And you're like, you feel alive. You feel like I'm here in this world, in the society, like I exist. This person is recognizing that I exist, right? They know who I am. Sometimes if somebody gets your writing, gets your poetry, they know you, they understand you better than a lot of people in your life do, right? Because there's a lot of people in your life who don't understand your poetry, don't understand why you're a poet, and then they don't really understand you. And so a stranger giving you validation almost understands you better than like a friend or a family member, for sure.
Yeah, you really have to, like, especially when it comes to certain type of poetry, like really read and or listen and understand. So I had like a few of my close friends help me edit my book, because with my attention span, I can't do shit. So I'm
Right.
like, all right, let other people spell check and whatnot. So like one of my boys, and we've been friends for like 9 years. And we're very close. He was like, listen, after reading this, he's like, I feel like I know you so much better now than I ever have in all the years we've been friends.
Right. All right. I mean, it's like reading somebody's journal, right? You can have a best friend and you guys just hang out, fucking play PlayStation, whatever the fuck, for years, right? You know how guys are. You know, we don't really talk. We talk a lot of bullshit. But if you could read your boy's journal and read what he really thinks and feels, you're like, holy shit, man! You never told me this. I never would have known.
Exactly that.
So I mean, when can we expect the book out?
Um, Later this year. It'll be before 2022. I could say that much. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pick that font.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard to be a perfectionist because you want it to be as great as possible, but then you also have to let it go, right? Let it go into the world. Because then you'll never
Yeah,
let it go. If you just focus on being perfect, it's never perfect. It's never enough, right? A poem never comes out the way you want it to. Does it ever come out the way you want it to?
yes.
Yeah?
I mean, it was me because I like I really sit with it, and I'm like, I'm
Mm,
making sure that the words, like I said, because if I can't speak it right, I'm gonna make damn sure I write it right.
right.
But there's like when it is coming to the book, it's one thing that, like I said, I'm like, I'm working on letting it go, because there's so many times I'm like, wait, I want to include one more. Like I'm arguing with myself, like keep it where you have it and don't touch anything else, and just fucking decide on a font. Or then this project I'll never let go.
Yeah, I mean Whitman. He came out with Leaves of Grass like when he was 36, and he was rewriting Leaves of Grass for like the next 50 years. Man, he didn't stop rewriting it. Let everyone know where they can find you on social media, bro.
Oh, yes, you could find me on Instagram at brand.ari and Facebook Brandon Ariel. Do I have a I have an imaginary YouTube. Eventually I'm gonna upload things, but my IG listen, my between my ADHD and my anxiety and my being a perfectionist, I'm a fucking train wreck. Wait, Instagram probably the best place. IGTV has all my stuff, and that's where I'll be making announcements about the book. And you could get a preview. A couple of my videos that are on my IGTV are gonna be in the book. I have a couple. I have the title poem B Notes, which is honestly a personal favorite of mine. That's up there, and Solace, which is one of those poems that I written 2011. And I even have a video called 10 Years of Solace. It starts with like the very first video I ever made of it, and then performances I've done of it, and then up to the most recent video. It's really fun to see not
Wow.
only like the development of my baby face to now, just how the difference in how it's performed and things have changed. So definitely check all that out. And this is definitely, I can say I'm proud of the baby. Once I choose a font, yeah, we'll be proud of it too.
Yeah, send me. Hey, once it's out, send me a copy and I'll review it. I'll put it on mono, man. Um,
Yo, for sure.
Thank you so much, man. Have a good weekend, and we'll be in touch. We always
Thank
are,
you for
right?
having me, brother.
Peace, bro.